Hi, I'm Tom Ziegler. Welcome to the Ziegler Legacy Series. Coming to you from beautiful Plano, Texas, just outside of Dallas. I'm so excited that you're with us, no matter where you are in the world. Do you know that we have over 7,500 people registered for this event? And I tell you, as the son of Zig Ziglar, that's just an incredible thing that so many people would gather around to really talk about legacy, to talk about the 5 most important things in life. And in our Legacy series, today we've got Brian Tracy. I spent some incredible time with him. But before we get into that, let me tell you about the Ziegler Legacy series. Right after November 28th, probably a month after that, that's when Dad went home to be with the Lord. Our family and our team got together and we said, how can we honor the legacy of Zig Ziglar? And one of the brainstorms that we came up with is we could go out and we could ask and invite people who are making a difference in the world, people who are authors and speakers and business experts from all over who have taken Dad's philosophy, taken his message, his key points, and integrated it into what they do and speak on a regular basis. So I'm excited today to have Brian Tracy, but we have some other people also in the Ziegler Legacy series. So if you have registered for today, you're also in the future, you're going to be able to see people like Dave Ramsey. In fact, Dave Ramsey's coming up October 30th this month. Spent some incredible time with him. Seth Godin, Andy Andrews, Ken Blanchard. Some of the world's best speakers. Literally, these people have written books that have sold millions and millions. All of them have one thing in common. Whatever their expertise is, they all say this. They say that in some point in their life, Zig Ziglar had an impact in what they were doing. So as we go forward today, I want you to know that we're excited you're here. Usually when we have one of these, we have people from over 30 or 40 different countries come and log in. So this studio in our offices allows us to reach out all over the world and have an impact. If you look at your screen, you'll see a chat room down below. This is totally up to you, but if you want to have a great conversation about this information while you're online and listening and learning, join the chat, because there's people all over the globe who are there, and you can trade ideas and remarks about what Brian has to say. So do that, and if you have questions that go along, we also have a question box at the top. Today's so much information, so power-packed, we're not going to have time for Q&A at the end. In fact, we're going to go straight to the video now. Before I do that, I just want you to know that Brian Tracy is an incredible guy. We spent some time with him, over 4 hours down in Southern California. We went to a studio where we filmed this. Billy Cox, who's a board member with us, we had lunch with him, and just a gentleman all across the board. When we got done with the interview, I said, Brian, I have a name for you. And he said, what's that? And I said, Brian, I'm going to call you the Nugget Bomber. You see, we asked him, Brian, what are the top 5 things that you would tell somebody to be successful in their personal, their family, their business, or their spiritual life? And, of course, Brian can't do anything halfway. So he broke it down into 5, and then he had 5 or 6 subpoints under each one of those, and then 4 or 5 points under each one of those. It was an amazing time. So sit back, get your pen and paper out, take notes, because you're going to learn a ton. Here's Brian Tracy. Watch this and enjoy, and I'll be back at the end. Hi, I'm Tom Ziegler. I'm CEO of Ziegler Inc., and we're here with the Ziegler Legacy Series. Boy, what a treat do we have. We have Brian Tracy. Brian, we've just had an awesome lunch, and I know through the years we've met from time to time on the road, and you shared the stage with Dad many times. And one of the things that I know that I love about you is that you are committed to inspiring and changing the lives of other people. And that's what Dad spent his life doing. So as we do the Ziegler Legacy Series, could you just, fill everybody in a little bit on your experiences with Dad?
Well, I first met Zig in 1976 at a seminar in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And I was blown away because he was so professional and so funny and so inspirational. I still remember some of his stories. So I attended seminars that he did, and I listened to his audio programs, and I bought his books. And in 1981, I began speaking myself in a small scale. And then over time, I spoke to bigger and bigger seminars. And then several years later, I was booked to speak on the same stage as Zig. He speaking half a day, me speaking half a day. So over the years, we worked together. We stayed in the same hotels. We had dinner together. We went from city to city together. And so it was a wonderful experience. And the wonderful thing about Zig is his very high integrity, and tremendous professionalism. He was just so beautiful on the stage. And I got to teaching people. I said, you know what the secret to success in this business is first of all, have a good message, and then it's hours on your feet. And Zig probably had more hours on his feet in front of audiences than any other speaker in the world at that time, and you could see the difference. So he was a great role model for me.
You know, Dad's told me, he used to talk about this publicly, but he actually gave 3,000 presentations before he ever got paid.
Wow.
3,000. Now, of course, there's a caveat in that. He was in direct sales.
Yes.
And the type of selling he was doing was a presentation style selling.
Right.
But when he was doing the presentation, he was trying to learn and get feedback from the audience to know what worked and what didn't work.
Yes.
Always communicating. Well, I know now, we were just talking, you're still traveling 120 nights plus a year on the road,
Yeah.
and you said you spend about 70% of your time overseas.
Yes. The world market for speaking, especially for American speakers, has changed dramatically. In the last few years, after 9/11 and after the collapse of 2008, many companies and many individuals have stopped going to seminars. It's almost like they don't work or something. But overseas, the market has exploded. I've spoken in the last few years in 61 countries.
Wow.
And I'm just negotiating 62 and 63, including Azerbaijan and Botswana. And these companies are hiring people like me. I don't know who else they're hiring, and paying us very good fees to go over there and share the ideas that have made America a great country.
So what is the number one thing that these countries are looking for? Because you know 60 plus countries. What's the secret, or what's the thing that they're asking you to come in and do?
Well, I was reading an interesting spiritual book the other day, and it said the greatest single motivation that people have is the desire to acquire. And I like that thought. The desire to acquire is, after all needs, as long as they're not threatened with death, like in a war or revolution, the very next need is the need to acquire things. And so people all over the world, what they want is they want to improve the quality of their lives. They want to be more productive. They want to earn more money. If they're in business, they want to have more profits. If they're in sales, they want to make more sales. If they're poor, they want to get out of poverty. And so they're looking for speakers who can give them practical ideas, business ideas, and personal development ideas to help them to acquire more stuff.
A little bit more stuff. You know, Dad, he has a quote. He says, "I've had money and I haven't had money, and overall it's better to have money."
Yeah.
Right? You know, if you're going to have problems, you might as well have some money with that. Is there any, any defining moment in your life that kind of changed your course and what you wanted to accomplish, where you were headed down a path and all of a sudden this is what, because so many people are looking for that little bit of inspiration, or that thing that says, that's what I'm built for.
Yes.
Did you have that moment in your life?
Sometimes we call this your signature story, your pivotal point, the transition point in your life. Up to that point, you were a certain person, or I was, and after that point, you were different for the rest of your life. And I had one. When I started working, I left high school without graduating. I worked as a laborer for several years. I started off washing dishes and washing floors, and then I worked in factories, and then I worked in sawmills. I worked in construction, and I worked on farms and ranches. I worked as a sailor on a freighter in the North Atlantic. I was a laborer. When I was 23 years old, I was an itinerant laborer working on the harvest on a farm. We used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning when it was pitch black, sleeping on the farmer's hay, and go out and eat breakfast with the farmer's family and get out to the field so we could get the crop in before the first frost. I was uneducated, I was unskilled, and at the end of the harvest I was once more unemployed. And when I could no longer find a laboring job, I got into sales. And in sales, I got straight commission, cold calling sales. They said, just go out and talk to people and you'll make sales. Well, I needed to eat. I had no money. And so I would run from place to place so I could get rejected more often. And after 6 months of struggling, I noticed there was another guy in our company, and he was making 10 times as much as anybody else. His name was Pete. And everybody was in awe of Pete because he didn't even work very hard. I was getting up at 6 in the morning. I'd be waiting for people when they came to work at 7:30 or 8. I'd knock on office doors all day, And then in the evenings, I'd go and knock on home doors and apartment doors. And I would make one sale every 2 or 3 days, just enough to eat. And this Pete, he would start work around 9 or 9:30. He'd quit work around 4:30. He always had a pocket full of money. He went to nice restaurants. He made sales to everybody he spoke to. And so I finally did something that changed my life. And I still remember the day. I still remember the sun shining through the trees. I still remember going up to him and asking him, Pete, what are you doing differently from me? How come you're making so many sales? And he said, well, show me your sales presentation and I will critique it for you. I said, I don't have a sales presentation. I just go and say whatever I think of. He said, no. He said, this is how you sell. And he sat me down and he showed me a series of questions that you could ask to separate prospects from suspects, to build rapport, to identify needs, to make a presentation, close a sale. And I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I couldn't believe there was a logical process to this. And so instead of going out and talking, I began asking questions. And customers responded to me differently. And I began to make more sales. And so I said, well, what else can I do? He said, we should read some of the books on selling. I said, are there books on selling? I had no idea. I went down to the bookstore, and I still remember, I couldn't believe it, all the books on selling, written by top salespeople, sharing the most incredible ideas. I began to read like a crazy man. I read and read. I've read now probably 6,000 books on sales and other subjects. And then I began listening to audio programs. And I still remember the first sales audio programs. They were so wonderful. People had spent years and put them onto these tapes. I still remember word for word some of the things that they recommended that you say. And then I went to my first sales seminar. Oh my, I couldn't believe what you could learn from a seminar. Even to this day, within 1 year, I was earning 10 times what I was earning when I spoke to Pete for the first time. Within another year, he was working for me. Because this is what I found, is Pete had gone through and worked with a big company. He'd gotten thorough sales training when he got out of college. And so he knew how to sell professionally. But after that, he coasted. And so he didn't have to learn anymore because he'd been so well trained. And I kept aggressively learning. And soon I was recruiting more people, building organizations. I had salespeople in 6 countries, and I was doing millions of dollars a month. And Pete had flattened out at his level, and pretty soon he was working for me. So what I learned, the turning point in my life, and if I only have a couple of minutes to share with anybody, I'll say this, is that all sales skills are learnable. All money-making skills are learnable. All business skills are learnable. That you can learn any skill you need to learn to achieve any goal you can set for yourself. They're all learnable. What it means is that you have unlimited potential. You can literally accomplish anything in life because you can learn what the other people learned and do it yourself.
That's amazing. Just recognizing that there are people who've already cracked the code. They've already mastered something that you don't even know exists yet. And you ask the simple question, how do you do it?
Yes.
And then you seek out and you go on that lifelong quest for learning. I think that's a great foundation. In the Ziglar series, what we're trying to do in this legacy series is to ask each expert, you know, what would you tell people, the top 5 things that they could do that would take them from where they are, and it can be in their personal life, it can be in their business life, it can be in their spiritual life, it could be in whatever situation they're in right now. What are the top 5 things that you would recommend? Let's go through them one by one. So what would be the first thing that you would recommend people to do in order to achieve all that they want to achieve?
Well, what I've found is that your level of self-esteem, how much you like yourself and respect yourself, is the energy source. It's like the reactor core of a nuclear reactor. It determines your energy, your confidence, your vitality, your personality. And so everything in life is either to build or to defend your self-esteem. And self-esteem is something that you can create within yourself by talking to yourself in a positive way. So actually what started me speaking was when I learned that you could say, I like myself. 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 I like. Say it all the time, over and over. And the biggest obstacle to success is not lack of potential or opportunity. The biggest obstacle is fear. It's fear of failure, making a mistake, losing your time or your money, or fear of rejection, that people will turn you down or say no or disapprove of you and so on. And this holds people back because fear paralyzes you. Well, there is an antidote to fear, and the antidote is self-esteem. Because the more you like yourself, the lower are your fears. So everything that you do that raises your self-esteem and self-confidence lowers your fears and removes your obstacles to success. And everything counts. Everything that you do counts. So we say that's the foundation principle. And you say the 5 things. Well, number 1 is to set goals. When I discovered goals, shortly after I asked Pete how to sell, when I discovered goals, I wrote down 10 goals on a piece of paper, which I promptly lost. But within 1 month, my whole life had changed. And after that, I became a lifelong student of goal setting. And Zig, of course, is one of the great masters. I've learned so much from your father about goal setting because he was able to put together goal setting formulas that were absolutely fabulous. We say that if you take from one person, it's plagiarism. If you take from several people, it's research. Well, I've researched Zig's programs. They've been very helpful to me. And so I began to teach people goal setting and practice it myself, and my whole life transformed. I find there's something in the process of deciding what you want and writing it down and setting a deadline and making a plan and working on it every day that will enable you to accomplish 10 times as much as if you had no goals at all. And so that was the first thing that I would recommend. And I've written a book on goals called Goals.
Mm-hmm.
And
awesome book.
Sold all over the world. And what it does is it summarizes all the best principles, including Zig's principles, and every other top person who's ever accomplished anything into one simple process. And if you could take it and apply it, people say they've literally gone in less than 3 years from rags to riches. Sure. They've gone from being poor to being millionaires with that goal setting. So that would be the first thing.
One of the things I always like to add on goal setting is if you're a manager or a leader or have your own company, goal setting, if you teach it, is one of the most incredible loyalty tools you'll ever create.
Wow.
We had an example in our many examples where we would teach a company goal setting or we would equip them to teach goal setting. And then somebody in the room would take the principles and then they would set a goal to get a house, totally outside of the company.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And they were making good money. They had a good job. You know, they were in sales or whatever the situation was. But they never knew how to get that house. They didn't know the steps to take.
Right.
And at the end of some time, they would get the house, and guess who they would give credit for that to? The person or the company that taught them how to set the goal.
Yes.
And so if you want to build a dynamic team or an organization, one of the best things you can do is teach them how to fish, how to set that goal.
Yes.
So goal setting's number 1 on your list.
Goal setting is number 1, and your goals have to be in writing. Again, that's another thing that I learned from Zig and from others, that a goal in your mind is just a wish. I say it's like a cigarette smoke goal. You blow out the smoke, it has no force, just disappears. Most people are walking around loaded with wishes. I want to be rich, and I want to be thin, and I want to be happy. And they say, those are my goals. Those are not goals. Those are just fantasies. They say a wish is a goal with no energy behind it. And
yeah.
So, yes, and so clarity, deciding what you want is essential. Now the second thing, of course, is time management. And what I've done over the years is I've taken each of these subjects that I consider to be important, and then I have done a full court press, a really intense focus on learning about the subject. So some years ago, Nightingale Conant Corporation, who I had already produced a couple of successful programs with, they called me and they asked me would I do a program for them on time management. They had 2 or 3 programs, but they like to bring out a new one each year. So I said sure, and then I sat down and looked at what I knew about time management, and it was basic. It was very little, not enough to fill a 6-hour program, which is about 60,000 words of material. So I began studying time management. Over the next year, I read 30 books on this subject. I listened to all the audio programs. I traveled around the country to 6 different time management seminars. I bought 10 time management systems, and worked with them and practiced to see which worked. And then I put together a program called Time Management for Results, and that has become the best-selling audio program in the world in multiple languages on time management. And later I wrote it into a book and to other books, and those books have become the best-selling in the history of the world on time management. And they all come down to one simple thing. All the time management books can be boiled down, and they'll come to one single thing. It's setting priorities. An expert once told me, he said, Brian, you know what time management is? It's determining the sequence of events. Time management is deciding what to do first,
wow.
what to do second, and what to do third, or not at all. And within that is your whole life. Because all you have is time. So the question is, how do you spend that time? Now, we say that time is like money. You know, you can spend money and it's gone forever, which people do when they waste time, or you can invest money and you get a return on it.
Right.
So you can spend time or you can invest time. When you invest time in becoming better at what you do, which we'll come to in a second, you get a return on that forever. So time management means deciding everything you have to do, setting priorities on what you have to do, organizing your priorities, selecting the most important priority, and then focusing on that. Now, there was an interesting incident that took place last year. It was at a dinner party, and Bill Gates of Microsoft and Warren Buffett of Berkshire Hathaway and Bill Gates' father were sitting chatting at this dinner, and someone turned and asked them, and everybody stopped, you know, and they said, "What would you gentlemen consider to be the big secret of success?" And all three, they broke off their conversation. They all looked and said at the same time, "Focus." They didn't compare notes. They didn't ask each other. They all spontaneously said, "Focus is the key to success." Now, if you look at our world today, the enemy of focus is distraction. We are distracting ourselves to death, especially because of technology.
Yes.
Oh, your phone goes off, your email goes off, your SMS goes off, your computer dings, bings, telephone, and unless you are really, really adamant, you will be distracted all day long. And at the end of the day, you'll have accomplished nothing. A friend of mine, Julie Morgenstern, wrote a book last year called "Don't Check Your Email in the Morning." Now, what she explains, and it's very important, if you start your day off with something that is distracting, you'll be distracted all day long. You'll be like a dog chasing passing cars. You'll never catch any of them, back and forth and back and forth. So what you do is you start your day off working on your most important task. And then later, she says, start checking your email at 11 o'clock. There's nothing in the world that will not wait until 11 o'clock. And you've all had experiences where your phone was out, your computer was out, or you were in a place where you couldn't get any messages for hours and hours and maybe days, and you never missed anything. So this idea that you've got to check your email is almost like an addiction. It's sort of like candy. It gives you candy, gives you a little sweet, makes you energizes you, and so on. But then you got a letdown. At the end of the day, you've accomplished nothing. So I wrote my book, Eat That Frog. And Eat That Frog is called How to Overcome Procrastination and Get More Things Done Faster. Pick your most important task and do your most important task first thing in the morning.
So simple.
Yeah, and I shared this. And by the way, once I started to do goal setting, I thought, well, what is the highest level of goal setting? And as a speaker, you know, you want to have an expensive product to sell. That's why strategic planning. They pay more for people to teach strategic planning than for any other type of consulting or speaking. So I decided, I set a goal to do strategic planning for large companies. Within 60 days, I was phoned out of the blue by a billion-dollar company and said, by the way, do you do strategic planning? Because we need to go away and sit down and take a look at the future of this business. And I did. And I developed an entire strategic planning process for them. They still say it was the best 3 days that they'd ever spent in their lives. And everything I learned about strategic planning is in the books. They say, how did you learn so much about strategic planning? I read about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. And since then, I've done strategic planning for some of the biggest companies in the world. Multi-billion-dollar companies with operations in 122 countries. And they pay very well for it because strategic planning is just a form of corporate goal setting.
Yep.
And with the corporate goal setting, you start off with the goals of the company and then the goals that each person will have to achieve in their position to achieve the goals. And then they start thinking, just like you said, well, I could use this in my home life, my family life, my income, my health, and everything else.
You know, I was listening to Dad's one of his programs on goal setting. And he said in the middle of this talk, and I remember stopping the CD, and he said, when you fill out your daily objective list, you see, he didn't call it his to-do list.
Right.
Internally in his mind, he had said, we have priorities, we have objectives, we don't have to-dos. To-do is laundry, it's putting the socks in the drawer. It's an objective of what I'm going to accomplish that's going to help me go to the next level. And it's so simple, but so few people do it.
Yes.
What is it? What is the thing that gets people to do it? Well, how do you break the habit from not being active in goal setting to going and doing it, or not being active in time management and going to do it?
Well, what you do, and it's what I teach, is you break your goals down or your objectives down into small pieces and do one of them. Sometimes they call this the salami slice method, where you eat one slice. Sometimes they call it the Swiss cheese method,
Right.
where you just punch a 5-minute piece. You have to use every trick, because the human being is designed by habit to procrastinate. And so you have to use every trick possible to get yourself started. Once you get yourself started, you're going. And here's the payoff. Going back to self-esteem. When you set big goals for yourself, you like and respect yourself more. What we found, the very act of writing down a goal of achieving a certain income, having a beautiful house, beautiful car, and so on, improves your self-image, because
Wow.
you think, I'm the kind of person who can do and be that. And you like yourself more, and it gives you more energy. Now, here's something that Earl Nightingale said, and he was quoting someone else. He said, happiness is the progressive realization of a worthy goal or ideal. In other words, when you feel yourself moving step by step toward the accomplishment of something
Right.
that you care about, you feel happy, and your self-esteem goes up, and your self-confidence goes up. So therefore, when you set a goal and you break it down into bite-sized pieces, and you take one step, each step gives you feedback, and it's positive feedback that releases endorphins in your brain that motivates you to take the next step.
Oh, that's awesome. Dad always called his workout goals, he called it a block and a mailbox. The first day he ran a block.
Yeah.
The second day he ran a block and a mailbox.
Wow.
The third day a block and 2 mailboxes.
And he started off very overweight.
Yeah, that's
didn't he?
right. And that's how you that's how you get up to 5 or 10 miles.
Yep.
A little bit each day. Well, we've got 2. So what is the third?
Well, the third is to dedicate yourself to continuous learning. Dedicate yourself to learning everything that you possibly can. Learn as though your life depended upon it, because it does. Now, they've done some studies at the University of Chicago by Gary Becker, who's a Nobel Prize-winning economist, and I had dinner with Gary Becker a couple of years ago. Very nice man. And what he looks at is he looks at the actions that people take relative to their economy, their personal economy. And what he found was that the 80-20 rule applies in America and throughout the Western world, is that 80% of people have flattened out in terms of skill development. And the work by Pears, his name is Pears Anderson, who at the University of Florida, who's done this work on what he calls elite performance or deliberate practice.
Mm-hmm.
What he found was that 80% of the population works in their first year to get their performance up to the point where they will not be fired or they will not get into trouble with their coworkers, and then they flatten out and they never get any better. That 10 years after a person has started a job, they are no more productive than they were after 1 year.
Wow.
That's the bottom 80%. As a result, according to Gary Becker, superimposing this data, the average working person's income goes up at a rate of about 1% per year, net after inflation. That's if they remain unemployed. If they lose their job for any period of time, they'll slip back. And that's why they're saying today that the average person is not earning more than they were earning 10 or 20 years ago. Is the average income of people is going down like the water level in a leaky bathtub. Why? It's because they're not upgrading their skills. And you know the old thing, garbage in, garbage out? It's last hired, first fired. The least productive people are laid off. And now we have people who've been laid off for 1 year and 2 years because nobody can hire them, and because they're not productive. And what are they doing during this time? Are they upgrading their skills and taking courses? No, they're sitting at home watching television and collecting unemployment insurance. And they're becoming less and less valuable. Today they're even advertising, if you are not currently working and employed, do not apply for this job. We don't hire anybody who isn't currently working, because if we do, we know that your skills will have dropped to the point where you're not worth our hiring. They're even trying to pass laws saying that you can't say that you only want people who are working to interview for jobs. They're trying to pass laws on that. Well, anyway, so you have to upgrade your skills. Now, what I found is that there's a 3-4 barrel way of doing it. Number one, read on a regular basis. Reading is to the mind as exercise is to the body. read, and I still read, and Tom and I were talking about this, we read 3 hours a day. And we may get behind and we get ahead, but we just read all the time. We breathe in, breathe out.
Yep.
We can't go across the street without having something to read in our pockets. We can't stand there. We've got to read. And every time we read, we're looking for ideas that can help us. So read an hour a day. If you read an hour a day, it turns into 1 book a week. 1 book a week turns into 50 books a year. To get a PhD in any field requires the reading of 30 to 50 books and synthesizing it into what they call a dissertation. You can get the equivalent of a PhD every year in your field by simply reading an hour a day, which is phenomenal. That means that and I've had people who've said, okay, I'll try it. I will read every day for an hour. They came back to me, they tripled their income in the first 30 days. Could not believe it. So the second thing you do is listen to audio programs. And the reason is, as Zig will explain, is that what's in an audio program is the condensed essence of sometimes dozens of books.
Yeah.
My first big selling audio program was called The Psychology of Achievement, and it had the distilled ideas of 300 books in it. It had so many ideas. It still sells in 28 languages worldwide. The book sells in 35 languages, millions and millions. Why? It's because there's so much stuff in there. So when you listen to an audio program, you can listen to it over and over, and you still hear new things because there's so much in a good audio program. And if you go to college courses, here's the interesting thing. 95% of what they'll teach you in a formal education is theory. It has no application to real life. Jim Rohn is famous for saying that formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. And so when you listen to audio programs or you read on your own, you only listen or read to material that's helpful to you now. You don't learn piles and piles of theory. You become very selfish and make sure that you're only taking in information that's important now. So the third thing you can do is go to courses and seminars. And what they have found is that more people's lives have been changed by attending a course or a seminar with a speaker than any other single influence in history. There's something in the air. There's almost something spiritual about being in a room with other people who are eager to learn and hearing this information. And sometimes you'll get an insight that has nothing to do with what the speaker is saying. Here's what I have found, Tom, is that one idea can change your life. Like my idea that you can learn anything you need to learn changed my life forever. I've never been the same, and it's guided my life ever since. Well, you never know what that idea is going to be. So what you have to do is you have to use the law of probabilities in your favor. What you have to do is expose yourself to lots of ideas. And I was driving down the street 3 years ago. I was driving to a seminar, and I was listening to another speaker on a CD, and the interviewer said, "What do you think is the key to business success?" And he said, "Well, the key to business success is simple. 90% is having a great product in the first place." Now, I've taken an MBA. I've studied 50,000 hours in business. I've taught 1 million managers and executives, but I never heard it distilled just that way. The key to success in business, 90% is having a great product or service to start with. And I thought, wow, it's amazing how many businesses and business people are so focused on marketing and sales and packaging and team building and all this stuff, and they're not focused on making their product a great product. So I thought, wait a minute, how could you tell if your product was a great product? And so I came up with the insight and made me $1 million. And it's making me millions of dollars over and over. The insight was this: it is what percentage of the time that your customers say after using your product, that was a great product. It's the percentage of times. So if they say it 1 out of 10 times, well, you're not long for the business world. If they say it 9 out of 10 times, now, what is the most successful business story in the last few years? Well, it's been Apple. Apple came from near bankruptcy in '97. It condensed and focused from 104 products to 4 major product groups. It brought out new products that Steve Jobs was determined that people would love, not like, they would love these products. And they brought out the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad and changed the world. Within a few years, Nokia had 50% of the market. When iPhone came out, they're down to 4%. BlackBerry had 50 to 80% of the business market. They're down to 4%. Why? It's because nobody loves their products. Nobody says with a BlackBerry, after you've fought with the darn thing for for hours and phoned the hotline and gotten the technicians and gone through to try to get it fixed. Nobody says this is a great product. This is something you suffer through. It's like cod liver oil. You know, nobody says it's sure delicious. It's not. You take it because you have to have it. Well, with Apple, people love the product. People run around and rave. When they brought out the iPod 5, I had an iPod 4, and I thought it was pretty advanced. And a bunch of young people around me said, "We've got the iPad 5." And they pull out the iPad. Look what this iPad 5 can do. And they're all comparing what the iPad 5 can do. I could not wait to get home and get an iPhone 5. I'm saying, unbelievable. So what happened with Apple is everybody says, this is a great product. So you can tell in your business your likelihood of success by how often people say, this is a great product or service. Go to a good restaurant, you walk out and say, that was a great restaurant. You go to a good movie, you walk out and say, that was a great movie. Is you do anywhere you go to a hotel, you say it's a great hotel. So what is the key to your success in life? It's very simple. Is focus 100% of the energies of everybody in your business to bring out that response. This was a great experience. This is a great company.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to be successful yourself, what applies to a business applies to you. Is have people say, he does a great job. She does a great job. Not a good job, a fair job, a sufficient job. He or she does a great job. Now, there used to be the story about Willie Sutton, the bank robber,
right,
who, when he was asked, why do you rob banks, he said, because that's where the money is. So I often say to my audiences, I say, why do you want to do a great job and get a reputation as doing a great job? Because that's where the money is. and people who do a great job, Fortune magazine had an article recently talking about the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and calculating their income in comparison with the average income of the people who worked in their companies. The average is 271 times. The average CEO earns 271 times the average income of the people in their company. And you know something? They make this big fuss about it. Those people, if they said, well, I'm not really happy with this company, they would be grabbed by another company and paid the same amount of money. Because why? It's because they do a great job. They bring about results that affect billions of dollars of sales and hundreds of thousands of people, and they are worth it, like the old perfume ad. You're worth it. Well, so your job is to do a great job. And if you have a business, your job is to produce a great product or service. People say, well, if I can find a gimmicky way to advertise or sell or so on. No, just make it a great product and people will break your door down. Imagine an Apple release. There's people waiting, sleeping on the street from midnight onward, hundreds of them sleeping on the street so they can buy a product first, which is going to be universally available later that day anyway. But they'll lay in the streets. How many people will get and sleep in the streets to buy your product or service? How many employers are coming over to your house on the weekend and say, please come and work for me? I used to say to my audiences, and I love you guys, but I used to say to my audiences, you can tell how good you are by how many job offers you get on a monthly basis.
If our salespeople don't get job offers on a regular basis, they're not doing their job.
That's right. There's something, jungle telegraph. Everybody knows where the good people are. And if you're really good at what you do, is you get job offers. People will be approaching you. They'll come to you. They'll ask for introductions to you. They'll take you aside. And you know what those employers do? They use a dirty trick. There's one dirty trick they use to hire away the good people. Do you know what it is? They pay them more money.
That's just not right.
Fastest way to get an increase is to be really good at what you do. And somebody will either pay you more money or your employer will pay you more money not to leave.
That's like when I was growing up, Dad would tell the story of a guy he worked with at the grocery store. And they were runners. And this other guy was a runner, Dad was a runner, which simply meant that he would run to the other store, borrow goods, bring back so they could sell it. Back in those days, they were friendly. And this guy, this young man, always ran into their store. And he'd say, Mr. Anderson, can I get 2 cans of green beans? He'd grab the green beans, he'd sign the sheet, and he would run out of there. And Dad looked at Mr. Anderson, his boss, and said, Mr. Anderson, why is he always running? And he said, well, he's working for a raise, and he's going to get it too. And Dad looked at him and said, how do you know he's going to get a raise? And he said, well, his boss is going to give him a raise, or I will.
Isn't that great?
Work ethic.
Yes.
Yeah. So look in the mirror and ask yourself this question: am I a good product?
Yeah.
Am I a good product? So
Yeah.
learning what you learn, you become a good product in that process.
Yes.
So that's 3. So we got
That's right. One more part of number 3
okay.
is associate with winners.
Yeah.
Associate with positive people. Remember, when you're a child, you may grow up in a family and you may get along with your brothers and sisters or not. And when you go to school, you have a variety of different friends. But when you become an adult, you choose the people you associate with. And those people will then determine the person you become. So we say, get away from losers. Zig used to say this, fly with the eagles, don't scratch with the turkeys. I never forgot that line. Fly with the eagles, don't scratch with the turkeys. Get away from the turkeys because they will pull you down. Is it Zig that used to tell the story about the crab pot?
Yes, where you they pull each other back in.
So how do you keep a crab in a pot? That's the question. And the answer is if you put one crab in a pot, the crab won't be able to, well, the crab will crawl out. So if you want to keep crabs in a pot, you put several crabs in the pot, and then if one of the crabs tries to crawl out, the other crabs will all pull them back down. And that's what negative people do. They always try to pull you and keep you in the crab pot, whereas successful people encourage you to be successful as well. So that's number 3. Number 1 is the foundation of self-esteem. And by the way, every time you learn something new that you can use to improve your life or work or your ability to do your job or even your ability to be a better parent or a better spouse, every time you learn something new, it triggers endorphins in your brain. It raises your self-esteem. It makes you happier. It improves your self-image. It gives you a sense of fulfillment. It makes you powerful. Learning is almost like an aphrodisiac. You take it, you snort a little learning, and you love it.
Snort some learning.
And snort
I'm going to tweet that out.
But snort the learning. Take in the learning. It's really, really important. And so your self-esteem goes up, your self-concept improves, your self-confidence goes up, and every so often you'll say, you know, I was just thinking, why don't we try to do it this way or that way? And everybody say, geez, that's a good idea. And you feel fabulous. And you read that idea in an article. I come across stuff in articles and audio programs now, just little ideas. Anyway, to round off, I took this idea and I created a seminar called The Total Business Mastery, the 2-Day MBA. And we wrote a book on it, which became a bestseller called Now, Build a Great Business. And we took the principles, great leadership, great products, great people, great managers, great numbers, great marketing plan, great sales plan, great customer service plan, great. And we say you need 10 greats in order to have a great business, and began to teach it. We teach it all over the world now, and people pay hundreds and thousands of dollars just to be in the audience for 2 days to learn these things. And they go out and they transform their businesses by saying we're going to achieve greatness at every level. So one idea can transform your life. Well, the next one has to do with people. The most 85% of all of your happiness in life is going to come from your relationships with other people. And some of us grow up with great personalities and some of us don't. We come from homes where maybe our parents are not positive and upbeat, so we don't know how to get along well with other people. But praise the Lord, all skills with people are learnable. So you can actually learn how to be really, really good in your interactions with others. You can learn how to ask good questions, and you can learn how to listen carefully to answers, and you can learn how to reinforce people. I wrote a book a few years ago called The Power of Charm. And what we found is, and I'm always looking for those insights, is that really successful people, in terms of popularity, are considered to be charming.
Yes.
He or she is a charming person. I mean, Zig was a really, really great motivational speaker, but in private, he was a charming man. He's a very nice man. So we said, well, there must be something to it, because nobody's born charming. And so we sat down, when my partner and I sat down, we came up with 35 things that you can do to be charming. And some of them are very simple. Is charming people ask a lot of questions and listen carefully to the answers and don't interrupt. And they treat other people as though they are really impressed by other people. They treat other people as though they're really important people anywhere they meet. And they nod and they smile and they're active listeners. And they give positive feedback and they compliment people. I'll tell you something that I do. It's a little aside, but I know that once in a while somebody will say something to a person and their whole life will be different afterwards. Remember Zig's famous story where his manager took him aside and said, Zig, you could be a great one. You could be a great one. And he'd never heard that before, and he was never the same afterwards.
That's right.
You could be a great one. You are a good salesman, but you could be great. And Zig, coming from a farm in Yazoo City, Missouri, or Mississippi, never occurred to him he could be great. And after that, it never occurred to him that he couldn't be. Now, does it mean that you're great the next day? No, it may take you years to realize your potential. So whenever I am going anywhere, you see young people working in stores, in restaurants, in cafes, and you'll notice occasionally some of them are just going through the motions. But some of them are really working hard. They're really doing a good job. So I will stop them and I will ask them their name. And I will say, what is your name? They give me their name. I said, look, I work with thousands of people. And so I have learned to recognize winners. And you are a winner. You have star quality. You have something about you that's going to enable you to accomplish extraordinary things in your life. This is not the beginning and end of your career. This is just a learning place. But you are really going places with your life. And I know that, and I'm never wrong. I just wanted to let you know that. And they go,
yeah.
And they walk away. They don't say anything. And I walk away and never see them again. But I've planted a seed. And you never know how many of those seeds, like some seeds will fall on fertile soil, but if a person has got this star quality, chances are the seed will take root. And weeks, months, years later, I have people come to me who have written me a letter and asked me for some advice, and I wrote them back, and I sent them a book. They come back to me years later. They said, you know, you changed my life. I never dreamt that some big shot like you would actually take the time to write me a letter and tell me you can do it. You have the ability to be a big success. And after that, I never doubted. And you think, wow, you never know when you have a chance to do that.
You know, I'm so glad you brought that up, because since Dad, you know, he went home to be with the Lord November 28th, not too many months ago, and we've gotten thousands of letters, emails, texts of people who've, you know, they've shared their condolences and they tell us how much they're praying for us. But it's the letters who said, you know, nobody knows this, but your dad called my daughter's hospital room when she was sick. Or your dad wrote me a 7-page letter. And so when you talk about moving from success to significance and this whole idea of people, yes, it's being able to focus outside, and when you see somebody either in need or doing an extraordinary job,
yes,
and you seek them out and you have that one-on-one time where it's just you and them, there is nobody else in the room,
yes,
that's when significance happens.
Yes.
So, and that's one of the things as a son, when I hear these stories about Dad and I see somebody else saying the same thing, that's when you know that, you know, it's just not something you've learned in your head. It's something that you've, you know, it encompasses your heart.
Yes.
It's about making a difference in somebody's life.
Yeah, and let me tell you something that's very important, that I'm happily married. I've been married to Barbara for 33 years. We have 4 beautiful children, lovely life. And I thank God every day for the great marriage that I have, because there's really nothing better in the whole world than to have a wonderful marriage. Probably nothing worse than to have a terrible marriage. Anyway, there used to be a speaker, and his name was Gary Smalley. He lived in Dallas.
Yep.
And Gary was a family sort of relationship counselor, marriage counselor. A wonderful man. And he tells a little story, and I never forgot it because he was on television. He said, imagine you're walking down the street, and you see a person coming towards you, and it's somebody you went to college with or high school 20 years before, and you haven't seen him for 20 years. And you say, oh my, it's you. It's you. How are you? Holy smokes, I can't believe it. And you stop and talk, and you're so excited to see this person. And you shake hands and say, geez, we got to get together, and so on and so forth. And you part, and you go home. And you walk in and say, what's for dinner? And who's got the control? Go and sit down and watch television and ignore your whole family. Well, the question is, who's the most important person in your world? Or who are the most important people? And the answer is the people at home. So after I heard that, I was a young married person when I heard that, from then on, I always greet every member of my family and their husbands, wives, and so on and so forth, like, it's you. Holy smokes, it's you. Whenever I'm doing anything, I stop. My kids come over, or their kids or grandchildren, they come over, and I treat them, it's you, look at you, I can't believe it. And my grandkids just love to see their grandfather, because their grandfather treats them like they're the most incredible people in the world. And I treat my children, and I treat their spouses, and every day I treat my wife the same thing. So if I could give one piece of advice, number 4, one piece of advice is treat the members of your family like they're the most important people in the world. Don't go home and turn on the television. Go home and walk in and say, wow, it's you. Go down the hall and visit your kids. Oh, my. These children are the most important. You die for these children, but you won't turn off the television to talk to them. Dennis Waitley said we get into the habit of treating our children like house pets, like dogs. We scratch them behind the ears a little bit and go back and watch TV. One of the great thinkers, Thomas More, said, leave things off. It's one of the great keys to success in family life is leave things off. Leave the television off. Turn off the computer. Turn off your cell phone. Turn off everything. Turn off the radio. Just leave things off and just be there and communicate and be charming and treat that person in your home like the most important person in the world. And they will never object. Yeah. If you haven't done this for a while, I tell men, if you haven't done this for a while and you go home and do this to your wife, she'll be very suspicious. She'll want to know what's going on here because it's so unusual. But very soon, by asking her questions and listening to her, you'll find that her day has been as fascinating or more interesting than yours has been. And it's absolutely amazing. There's a rule that I learned that the only way that you can increase the value of a relationship is by investing more time in that relationship. If you want to grow flowers, you put more water and fertilizer on the soil so the flowers will bloom. If you want to grow a relationship with a child or with a spouse, you invest more time, more one-on-one time, and leave things off. It's the time you spend in the silence that is the great joy. So that's what I would say with relationships. Treat everybody on the outside well, but treat your spouse like, wow, it's you.
Yeah. You know, Dad's book, Raising Positive Kids, had a byline, and it said love is spelled T-I-M-E.
How does a child spell love? T-I-M-E. Do you know that children's personalities, good point, children's personalities, their character, their self-esteem, their self-image, their belief in their own personal value is formed directly by the amount of one-on-one eye contact that their parents give them when they're growing up. The more their parents look at them and smile and are happy and love them and listen to them and talk to them when they're growing up, the stronger and more confident they are as adults.
Wow.
But if parents don't spend time with them or give them eye contact, the child at an unconscious level concludes that I am defective in some way. I am inferior. And as you know, the biggest problem in the Western world is this inferiority complex. And maybe 98% of people feel, I'm not good enough. I'm not as good as others. I'm not good enough to set big goals. I'm not good enough to overcome these obstacles. And it comes from their parents not giving them loving eye contact when they were children.
Wow.
So important.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and I learned that when I was a young parent, and I bathed my children in loving eye contact. I've done it for years, and I've taught other parents to do this as well. And the parents come back and they say, it's like a miracle. I've got problem kids. They're surly. They're disobedient. They're not doing well in school. They're getting poor grades. They're starting to associate or hang out with bad people. And I just started giving them loving eye contact. I say, imagine that your eyes are sun lamps and you want to give your children's face a tan. And each time you see them, give your children's face a tan, an all-over tan, by giving them loving eye contact. She said the personality problems stopped, their grades go up.
Wow.
My daughter got a scholarship to a leading university. My kids started scoring well in sports. They have wonderful friends. It's just a miracle what you can do if you'll take the time and leave things off.
Just notice me, Mom. Just notice me, Dad. That's what they want. They just want to be noticed. Okay, number 5.
Well, I would say number 5, and if you really want to be a financial success, we can go many directions here. No, I'll go back. I would say number 5 is to take wonderful care of your physical health. What I was going to say is that if you want to be successful in business, you have to learn how to sell well. An enormous number of people are terrified of selling, and they don't understand that they always end up working for wages. I have people write to me who are in financial despair, and they say, I'm working at Burger King. I'm 54 years old. Yesterday, I'm making $11 an hour, and I'm the manager, and deeply in debt. Is there anything I can do? And my answer is you have to learn to sell something to somebody. You're not going to ever be successful simply working for wages with no skills. You've got to sell something. But the real thing is take good care of your physical health. Today you can live longer and you can live better than has ever been possible in human history. And I've been through some health challenges. I don't even think of them problems, a little cancer, a little rotator cuff surgery, a little back surgery, blah, blah, blah. I consider them to be blips or speed bumps on the road of life. But the wonderful thing is that the medical services that are available to us today will enable you to live to be 80 or beyond. The average lifespan in America today is about 80 years. That means half will be above, half will be below. You can live to be 90 or 95 years old and still have spring in your step and be laughing and having a good life. And if you start to read the obituaries, which I don't read, but every so often I notice a famous person has died. What age did they die at? 86, 92, 94, 93. That never happened at the beginning of our lifetimes or our parents' lifetimes. So you can live a wonderful life, and the keys are do what you know you should do. You know, I used to in my seminars, I started to give lectures on health. And people said, we don't want to hear any lectures on health. I said, but health is so important. They said, we know what we're supposed to do and we're not supposed to do. We don't want to hear you reminding us of it. You just feel guilty. In other words, you're not teaching us anything. We know you're supposed to eat really good foods. You're supposed to exercise on a regular basis. You're supposed to get lots of rest. And, of course, that's for your physical health. For your mental and emotional and spiritual health, I say read spiritual material. Whatever your spiritual orientation is, take some time to sit and read some beautiful stuff written by beautiful people about how to enjoy greater peace of mind. You know, 85% or more of all illnesses are caused by disruptions of the mind. The unhappiness, psychosomatic. Psycho, the mind, makes soma, the body, sick. And if you are calm and happy and at peace because you're connected to some higher power, for your physical health, it's going to be just wonderful as well. So that would be the fifth thing. Yeah. And it's not something you leave to chance. It's something you think about all the time. Every time you look at a bite of food, you ask, is this going to help or hurt? Every time you look at a health habit.
You know, for me and my own appetite, my own weight journey, you know, people, they're overweight, they're in bad shape, and it's because they eat too much of the wrong things. They don't do enough of the right things. My whole physical condition changed when I learned this one simple principle, which is one of your foundational ones. What you feed your mind determines your appetite.
Wow.
What you feed your mind determines your appetite.
Wow.
And it's literal. And it's not just about business or about relationships, but it's about food as well. In NASCAR, they say when you're going 185 miles an hour around the track, in order to make the turn, you've got to focus your vision around the turn. If you look at the wall, you hit the wall.
Wow.
And so as you focus your mind, as you feed your mind, incorporate in there not only spiritual things and good things about business and relationships, but also nutritional things.
Yes.
Just read some nutrition.
Yes.
And your mind, that'll just change your appetite to want those things.
You know, it's interesting. I read a book on health when there weren't very many books when I was 21 years old. And it was by a great guru at that time named Gaylord Hauser. And it was about nutrition. And I was never the same again for the rest of my life. Because he explained so clearly the goodness and importance of proper nutrition. And of course, I didn't always follow it, mind you, but I never forgot those ideas.
Oh. Well, I tell you what, Brian, this has been incredible. I mean, you talk about endorphins going, I'm like bubbling over with so many things I want to go write down. It's so great to see you and just to know that you're out there carrying the torch. I mean, for everybody watching this, one of the things that I want to share with you as I talk to leaders is we all have a passion, and I call it the torch. Because when we go out and we get to speak and we get to get a group excited, that's one thing. But when we can take our light and light somebody else's torch, and then they go out and do the same thing, that's when we sit back and we get the most joy. Because that's really what joy is about, is when you see somebody else who you've been able to give just a little tip, a little bit of truth, that whatever that nudge is that gets them over the hump to the next level, that's where it gets exciting. Is there anything, this is the Ziglar Legacy Series, is there anything you would like to close with? I mean, I'm so appreciative, and I know Dad's looking down saying we're doing good down here, keep at it. Is there anything you want to close us off with today?
Yes, well, I know that people watching this are some of the smartest people in our society or in any society. And I've worked with top people for years, and they've asked me, how do I change? I mean, what's the key to changing from where they are to where they want to be? And I say there's only 4 ways to change. And these 4 ways you can incorporate into your life in every area for the rest of your life. Number 1, you can do more of certain things. And what you do more of, you do more of the things that you're getting the best results from today. Number 2 is you can do less of other things. And this seems so obvious, but what do you do less of? You do less of the things that aren't working or that aren't valuable, that waste your time, that don't give you the results that you want. Number 3 is you can start doing something completely new. And this is the big one. This is the real shift, is when you start doing something you've never done before. Les Brown has this wonderful line. He said, to achieve something you've never achieved before, you must become someone you've never been before. And I add on to that, and you must do something you've never done before, and you must learn a skill you've never had before. You cannot achieve anything different on the same level as you are today. So what do you need to start doing? And the 4th way to change is to stop doing certain things altogether. So you have to ask yourself, what are the things I need to stop doing altogether? I ran into a friend of mine recently. He'd been overweight for years, and I saw him, and he's wearing his clothes. They were swaying. He lost all the extra weight. And I said, how did you lose so much weight? He said, I found I never gained weight from anything I didn't eat. I just stopped eating desserts. I stopped eating desserts and anything with sugar, any kind of pastry or bread or anything else. I just stopped doing it. And the weight just fell off. In other words, there's some things you need to stop doing altogether to bring about a major change in your life. So as you go through life, you keep saying, more of, less of, start or stop. More of, less of, start or stop.
Wow.
What do I need to do? And if you'll take all of the ideas that we just talked about here, just ask yourself, which of these should you do more of or less of? Which should you start and what should you stop?
Awesome. Well, Brian, thank you so much. What a joy, what an honor, what a blessing.
Thank you, Tom.
We'll see you next time on the Ziglar Legacy Series. I'm Tom Ziglar. Brian Tracy, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Wow, that was amazing. Brian Tracy, what an incredible time I had with him. You know, I feel so blessed to be able to reach out and connect with these people, these authors like Brian and speakers who've impacted so many people all over the world. So much wisdom in that. I have good news for you. Whether you watch this whole thing and you're wishing somebody else you know could have watched it, or maybe you came in halfway and you want to capture it all, or maybe you want to share it with your office or a team member, we are going to make that possible. Tomorrow, early in the morning, we're going to be sending everybody who registered an email, and it's going to have replay information, a link where you can go in on your own schedule and watch this as many times as you want. It's not going to be available forever, so when you get that email, you'll want to forward it out to everybody you know. Help us spread the word about the Ziglar Legacy Series. Help us share Brian's wisdom all over. He has so much to offer. And then that way, the people who you love and care about can be a part of this. Once again, let me remind you about the Ziglar Legacy Series, because we would love your help. We have so many people coming who are just fantastic. You've already heard Brian. Nick was last week. We're going to be making available his replay again in the future. Seth Godin's coming up. Dave Ramsey's going to be with us October the 30th. We'll be sending you information on that. And, of course, there's Andy Andrews and so many more who are coming. We appreciate you for being here once again. My name is Tom Ziglar. I'm the CEO of Ziglar Inc. What a blessing to have you. I hope this inspired you, gave you information you can use to take your personal life or your business life to the next level. We'll see you again next time on the Ziglar Legacy Series.